If everyone's ready, go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to the October 26th regular Planning Commission meeting. We will start with roll call and I'll look to Emily to take roll call for us.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I am here. I'm just remote today, so I will still handle roll call responsibility and vote responsibility tonight.
All right, great, Ben. I didn't see you there. Thanks.
Yeah, okay.
So look to the director then to get us started with roll call.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bigham.
Here.
Commissioner Britton. Did not see Commissioner Britton on the call yet, so Commissioner Frazier.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Knable.
Here.
Commissioner Rasmussen.
Here.
And Chair Kambata.
Here. Next on our agenda will be approval of the agenda. If there are no changes or comment, I would look for a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda from Commissioner Frazier.
All right, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Bigham.
That's a tie, so we'll say a second from Commissioner Bigham. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and I'll look to the director for roll call.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Britton. Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
Commissioner Rasmussen.
Aye.
And Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is going to be open forum. This is going to be an opportunity for anyone to speak on behalf of an item that is not already on tonight's agenda. So if there's anyone in the audience or anyone who's looking online, there's a couple ways that you can respond or post a question, and I'll go through those here quickly. First, you can post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I'll state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address questions accordingly. The second option would be to use the raise my hand option. If you wish to verbally ask a question, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting that option to assure that you'll be heard. I'll then call on you by name and you'll be allowed to ask the question, and then understand that once the question is asked, we'll mute you and we will address the question, and any follow-up questions will require you to raise your hand again. So with that, we'll see if there's anyone who wants to bring up anything that's not already on tonight's agenda. I don't see anyone in queue. We'll give it a minute or two. All right, next we'll move on to the chair's explanation of the hearing process. The Planning Commission is a volunteer advisory group to the City Council. One of the Commission's functions is to hold public hearings and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide an opportunity for each applicant and citizens to present information, ask questions, and express opinions. Since these proceedings are televised and recorded for public record, anyone wishing to speak can do so in one of the following two ways. Post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address questions accordingly. You may also use the raise my hand option if you wish to verbally ask a question. Please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you will be heard. I'll then call on you by name and ask the question. Please understand that once the question is asked, you will be muted. If you have follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option to ask additional questions. Staff reports are prepared and provided to the applicant and Planning Commission in advance of this meeting. The first step in the hearing process will be for staff to present a summary of the report. The applicant will then have the opportunity to briefly explain the proposal and provide additional information or comment. Anyone wanting to speak in favor or against the proposal will then be heard. Upon completion of the testimony, the hearing will be closed to the public comment, and the Planning Commission will then discuss and act on the matter. The agenda packet is available for viewing on the City of Cottage Grove website. The City Council will act on agenda items 6.1, 6.2, 6.1 and 6.2 on their Wednesday, November 4th meeting. which starts at 7 p.m. At their meeting on November 18th, the City Council will act on Agenda Item 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and CIP 2021-2025. With that, we will move on to item 6.1, which is the lot split at 8811 92nd Street. And that is case MS 2020-044 with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, just making sure. I thought I clicked a goofy button. My apologies. Again, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item before you, or the first item before you this evening, is a request for a minor subdivision located at 8811 92nd Street. The minor subdivision request is to split a current 1.8 acre parcel into an approximate I'll call it a 1 acre parcel, and then about a 0.8 acre parcel for future commercial development. This parcel is located off of technically 92nd Street, but also more recognizable off of East Point Douglas. It sits just behind Target and just north of Wells Fargo. So a little bit of background about this parcel in the surrounding area. PUD and a plat were approved in 2000, which allowed for this mixed-use development as a whole. So it included some commercial development, as well as the townhouse development, and also at the time the existing Menards site as well. At the time, the original proposal did show at this 8811 site or parcel 2 commercial or office type buildings to be constructed on just this parcel as a whole. So actually, and then in 2001, a building permit was issued for the building that sits there on this parcel today. The second building was actually never constructed. So with that, the applicant, as I mentioned, is requesting a minor subdivision to create a separate developable parcel off of this existing parcel. So again, it would create about a 1 acre parcel with the existing building, and then would allow for about a 0.8 acre parcel for the future construction of a commercial building. The applicant has indicated, of course, given the times, it's been a bit tricky to market such a spot. So he's hoping that with a minor subdivision, creating a marketable individual lot might give him some additional options, either to sell the parcel off for development or potentially develop the site themselves, depending on what opportunities they do come across. And I want to make note that the proposed parcel does in fact meet all of the minimum standards of the mixed use zoning district that we did, if you recall, just recently amended. So all of those minimum standards are met by the proposed lot before you. And then I just wanted to make note that as a part of the submittal, we did ask the applicant to provide just a general site plan. We just want to be sure that if we're creating this new commercial lot, that some type of building, as well as all of the other minimum standards as a part of development, including parking, green space, landscaping, access, all of those things were able to be met. So on the screen before you is, and again, very preliminary, just the ability to show us that something could, a usable use would fit on the site. Again, a preliminary site plan, but the applicant and or potentially a new property owner would be required to actually go through the site plan review process to ensure, again, all the minimum zoning standards would be met for a future commercial development on the site. So you would see that again back before you at that time. So with that, I will leave the recommendation. Staff is available. I also know the applicant, Mark, is available for any questions directed towards him as well.
Perfect. Thank you. At this time, would the applicant like to add any additional information to their application?
Hi, this is Mark Slitterman. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. I'm not computer literate, so this is a miracle right now. But no, I think she summarized it very well, and it just gives us lots of flexibility to figure out how to develop that parcel and allow it to possibly be something different than the same as the building behind it. So I'm here to answer any questions.
All right. Well, thank you. We appreciate your time. With that, I will go ahead and open public hearing on this matter. So with public hearing, same as before, anyone who would like to speak for or against the application has one of two options. You can post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I will state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and then we will address the question accordingly. The second option is to use the raise my hand option if you wish to verbally ask a question. Again, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you'll be heard. And with that, I will go ahead and see if we've got anyone in queue. And I'm not seeing anyone, but we'll give it a minute here. All right, we'll go ahead and close public hearing on this matter. Any additional questions or comment from the commission?
This is Commissioner Frazier. I do have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
So Emily, I am assuming the answer is yes, but the existing building on the new lot number 2, I believe it is, does that building conform to all of the setback requirements, specifically with the new lot line that's being created?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Frazier, the existing building on the lot 2, as you indicated, does in fact meet the minimum standards currently.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Frazier. Any additional questions or comment? I have a question for staff. With regard to the proposed plat that they had provided, did that accommodate for the standard requirements for parking? And were any special considerations made in order to meet that minimum standard?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So that was ultimately a part of the request for the preliminary site plan to ensure that all the minimum standard, including parking, would fit. The minimum parking also will kind of hinge on what they propose the use to be in that building, but I think with what they've proposed as a general site plan, they'll be able to meet that minimum standard.
Okay, but so there's no overwhelming concern of kind of having a landlocked site where development wouldn't, development wouldn't allow them to meet the standard requirements and still meet their, most likely use for the property. There's no concerns there?
Mr. Chair, no. I really think there'll be enough flexibility for a use that will meet those minimum standards.
Perfect. Thank you. Any additional questions or comment from commission? Okay. I thought I heard somebody. No. At this time, I would look for a motion from the commission.
As Commissioner Rasmussen, I'd motion to approve minor subdivision case number MS 2020-044.
Subject to the stipulations
Condition.
stated in the staff report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve, subject to the stipulations stated in the staff report from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do we have a second? I'll second that motion. Further discussion?
This is Commissioner Rasmussen. I just, I think it gets us one step closer. It is a small site, but I think they're doing their homework. It looks good, and it gets us one step closer to a shovel-ready site and get somebody on it. So that's good in my view.
I agree. I feel like it's going to expand the possibilities for highest and best use for that property, and that's going to offer more options for, a potential end user to bring more business into town. So I'm happy to see this this consideration made. With that, any other additional comment? Okay, so we've got a motion to approve in a second. At this time, I'll look for a vote, and I'll turn that over to the director for roll call. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Rasmussen,
Aye.
Chair Kabata,
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher, Commissioner Fisher.
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Now we'll move on to item 6.2, 61 Marine Lot Split, minor subdivision 2020-046 with Mr. Burbank presenting. John, if you're there, we're not hearing you.
You hear me now?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The application before you this evening is a minor subdivision. The applicant is 61 Marine and Sports. Property owner, Jim and Peg Couturier. What the request is that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing for a minor subdivision to divide a 32.48 acre parcel of land at the corner of Manning Avenue and Highway 61 into a 2-acre parcel and a 30.4 acre parcel. Here is a detail in yellow of the 2-acre parcel, and the balance of the parent parcel would remain in its current configuration. It's bound by Manning Avenue, Highway 61, and 104th Street public right-of-way to the north. Back in 2019, 61 Marine came in for an application for an expansion of a non-conforming use, which included the expanding of the area we're discussing this evening. They were just in the process of working out a lease for that. So as a part of the approval in resolution 2019-006, it had a condition that if they were to acquire the property in fee title, that they had to go through the minor subdivision, and that's where we are this evening. Back in 2019, it was actually end of 2018 and carried into 2019, they expanded their mechanical building out on the western portion of the site and also expanded in the storage areas to the east there. As a part of the grading for that redevelopment portion of the project, they did address their surface water management, and the city is working on finalizing a stormwater management agreement for that ponding in that area. They are private ponds with a public surface water management easements over them. As a part of the lot split, you'll see conditions in the staff report that we would require 10-foot drainage utility easements along the north, south, and east property lines of this new parcel. Here's a ortho photo with the topography shown on it, relatively flat site. It currently is in small crop agricultural use, or was this summer. And these trees that are sitting here were removed as a part of that agricultural use. The land use for the property is commercial. The zoning for the property is B2, general retail, and that's the reason that the expansion of the non-conforming use was needed in 2018 and previous times in the past, in that outdoor storage and sales of boats and other recreational vehicles is not a permitted use. So every time they need to do something different, they come before the Planning Commission and City Council. The property is in development staging area 6 of the MUSA, which is far off into the future, so there's no public utilities in this area. we do address stormwater management as a part of the surface water management, or as a part of the subdivision. The conditions approval that were included in your staff report are that all conditions of resolution 2019-006 shall be complied with. The surface water management agreement shall be executed and recorded with Washington County. Prior to the release of the deed for recording with Washington County, a surface water management area charge of $19,400 shall be paid to the city by the applicant. Prior to the release of the deed for recording with Washington County, a $12,000 park dedication fee shall be paid to the city by the applicant, and any future subdivision of the parent part of the 30.48 parent parcel will require payment of area charges and park dedication at that time and at the rates applicable at that time. And then the final condition is that the newly subdivided parcel will need to be combined with parcels 3602721420024 and 3602721410007 at Washington County. With that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission recommends that the City Council approve a minor subdivision to subdivide a 32.48 acre parcel of land at the corner of Manning Avenue and Highway 61 into a 2-acre parcel and a 30.4 acre parcel, subject to the conditions I just went over.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And the applicants are here this evening online.
Then at this time, I would invite the applicant to add any additional comment to their application. Al, I'm not hearing anything. We'll give the applicant just another minute here.
This is Jay for Al.
Yeah.
He said that, and we agree, John pretty much wrapped up exactly what we're trying to accomplish there. So there's really no other comments. Just appreciate everything.
Perfect. Thank you for your time tonight. All right. With that, then, we will open public comment on this matter. Again, for anyone wishing to speak for or against the application, you may post a question using the Q&A option. If you post a question, I'll state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we will address questions accordingly. If you choose the other option, which is to use the raise my hand option, you're allowed to verbally ask the question. Please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you'll be heard. I'll then call on you, and once question is asked, you'll be muted. Any follow-up questions, we'll have to reselect the raise my hand option. And with that, we'll go ahead and give a couple of minutes here to see if anyone's in queue or if anyone wants to make a comment on this application. All right, seeing none, we'll close public hearing and move on to the commission. Any additional questions or comment from the commission regarding this application? Okay. My take on it is, given that it is kind of concluding what was already agreed to last year, I'm happy to see that they were able to make progress and acquire the property. And I don't really see any issue with what they're asking for. So if no one else has any additional comment, I guess I'd look for a motion at this time.
Motion to approve the minor subdivision subject to the conditions in the staff report from Commissioner Frazier.
A motion to approve, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have a second?
Second, Commissioner Fisher.
Second from Commissioner Fisher. Any additional comment from the commission? All right, at this time, I'll look for a vote, and I'll turn it over to the director. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Frazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Knable,
Aye.
Commissioner Rasmussen,
Aye.
and Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. Next on to item 6.3, Glacial Valley Estates zoning amendment 2020-047 in preliminary plat 2020-048 with Emily Schmitz presenting.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Next item on the agenda is a proposal from Donna Homes. It is for a zoning amendment for approximate 18.95 acre parcel, rezoning from R5 medium density to essentially R5 medium density with a planned unit development, as well as a request for a residential subdivision, which would be called Glacial Valley Estates, proposed with about 100 residential lots for townhouse units. The property or the project location is located right at the intersection of Keats Avenue and the historic military trail. It is parcels for properties that were owned by the Bloomquists. It is in fact two separate parcels that will be a part of the project. There are in fact two residences between the two parcels, as well as some other outbuildings that will be removed as a part of the project. A couple of wooded areas on the site, as well as some tilled fields in the area. And just a little bit of history or background. In 2018, if you might recall, a project that was to be called Stony Brook Villas was in fact approved on these particular properties. That went through the public hearing process for a land use amendment, a rezoning, as well as a final plat. That request was for, I believe it was 42 duplex units at the time. But I just wanted to make note that at the time that Donna Homes did purchase these properties, they did request to rescind that final plat in order to propose their development as they so chose. So with that, again, it is proposed at 100 units. Each building it's a quad building or 4 units per building. The entire development will be HOA maintained, so all of the common areas where the landscaping will be, so the private drives, I'll call them, or fingers, will all be privately maintained through that HOA. The applicant has, of course, proposed the minimum standard for parking, so there are some additional guest parking throughout the development as well. Both of these parcels are in fact guided medium density residential. I know I indicated in 2018 there was a land use amendment request at that time. As you'll see in the East Ravine master plan, these parcels were in fact guided high density residential. So at the time in 2018, the developer did request to re-guide these parcels to medium density given the market at that time, which I think we can confidently say exists today as well. So again, with the most recent approved 2040 future land use plan, both of these parcels have been maintained with that medium density guidance. Again, that's between 5 and 13 units per acre. The developer is in fact proposing 10.29 net units per acre, so right in line with that land use. Access to the site is coming from a couple different directions. So Woodward Ponds, and I know it's goofy how I had to angle the plat here. It's easier sometimes to look at it the other way, but north is in fact this way to the left of your screen. But access will continue through from the Woodward Ponds development that's currently under construction just to the west of this site. So Jody Avenue will continue through to Keats Avenue. Again, and then of course, access will also come off of Keats Avenue into the development, and with that, the county is requiring a turn lane be installed. And then I'll note future access at such time the properties to the north of this particular development site do develop. There will be that connection, that Jorgensen Avenue stub. But in the meantime, as a part of this development, we will require that a temporary cul-de-sac be installed for emergency vehicle purposes and public safety per their request. As per our typical standard, the developer is proposing sidewalk on one side of each of the public streets. So that will provide pedestrian access throughout the project. I also want to note that they are proposing a sidewalk connection from the development to the recently installed military trail corridor that was constructed as a part of the Woodward Ponds project, again, just to the west. So that trail is existing, and then a part of this proposed Glacial Valley project and a part of the PUD, that a trail, I'll call it a segment, will be constructed from that existing military trail here at on Keats Avenue and travel north all the way to the north property boundary of this particular project. This particular area of the community is not guided for any future park, and specifically on this parcel. So I just wanted to make note that, of course, the city does have plans for quite a large future park on the north side of Ravine Parkway in this particular area, East Ravine. The developer will, in fact, then just pay the minimum park dedication fee required, which of course goes to maintaining existing parks and constructing new parks. But again, this park construction is planned to start in 2022 and will be in approximately 3 phases. So we'll see that in the coming years. And again, pedestrian access from the proposed development can kind of come from multiple different avenues through Woodward Pond, so of course, along Keats up and over. The applicant has in fact provided minimum required landscaping for the site. I want to make note that along Keats Avenue, our zoning code does require a buffer of 75 feet, which the developer has proposed. And as you can see, provided quite some intense landscaping within that buffer to create a great image for folks traveling north and south on that Keats Avenue. And again, throughout the entire site, a large amount of landscape provided, as well as maintaining quite a good buffer along this historic military trail corridor of some existing mature trees as well. I wanted to make note of. And additionally, I just want to make a quick note, they'll also provide some fencing on their property just to create a better buffer between the existing residents that does exist on the north side as this area continues to develop. The storm infrastructure that's proposed as a part of this project will be in this northwest corner of the project area. The developer, who also developed Woodward Ponds, will essentially be expanding the pond that was approved as a part of Woodward Ponds. So kind of these developments will work together, for lack of a better way to describe it. And both of these areas will be required to be platted as an outlot and essentially deeded to the city so that we can maintain long term. The architecture proposed is varying materials, of course. I believe it's approximately 1,600 square feet for each of the units that they're proposing. Staff has requested to the developer some additional color palettes and architectural materials. They're also working on townhome units in Mississippi Dunes development down there as well. And given this proposed development is within the East Ravine area of the community, we want to make sure that we're kind of providing a little bit of variation and maintaining that higher standard throughout the area, just as we did with the Woodward Ponds development as well. I know that the developer does have some additional information to share after I'm done giving my spiel. So with that, I will leave the recommendation before you, but again, staff is available, and as I mentioned, the developer is available as well to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Emily. At this time, I would invite the applicant to add any additional comment to their application.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
yeah, it's a little muted. Are you able to turn your volume up?
Mr. Chairman, is that better?
That's better.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission members, this is Paul Donay with Donay Homes. And I'm also with Steve Benke, who works with me on the developments and does my architectural work. So I sit here actually for any questions that you might have in regard to this development.
All right. I'm familiar with your development in Mississippi Dunes. Are these going to kind of mirror those floor plans? It's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 3-bedroom, 3-bath?
Yes, these are going to be 3 bedrooms, and they are 1,700 square feet. And they're similar. We're going to enhance the architectural elements with some stone and some different roof styles and a little different siding types. You know, we had to, Mr. Chairman, we had to adhere to the architecture that was in place in that Mississippi Dunes, and that was a project that was brought to me. I was building single families next door there. And there was a fellow who owned that property, and he didn't really want to build anything. And it had been sitting there since, I suppose, the early 2000s when the builder there stopped building. I don't know if he went out of business or what the circumstances were. But so it was brought to me, and I didn't really plan on doing it, but it happened to be I looked at the plans. It happened to be a building that I had designed, my architect probably in the late 1990s, and so it kind of fit into place like a glove. And I said, well, sure, it was my building, and he took it and changed 1 or 2 elements and copied it. But so that's why I got into that residential site there, and it's gone very well. It's been accepted very well by the marketing, by the public. And so we thought that we would take, those are 6-unit buildings, which was being built like by the original builder. So we took those, we took out the inside units, and we developed a 4-plex, which we had done over the decades in many communities. And we took that 6-plex, pulled out the inside units, and made a 4, which gives them a really nice feel because they have 2 outside walls then, and they have their patio and a lot of more green space. So that's the way we've approached this site.
Okay. Good. Do you have any additional comment on, what the market is kind of indicating for you as far as the direction of these entry-level homes?
Well, you definitely have to keep them because they've been well received, the ones we're building now. So this land is a little more expensive on the east side of town. So we're going to have to raise the price a little bit to accommodate for that. But we do have to maintain the price range and not get too high because they are being so well received. And we should be finishing that project this spring. So those will all be built out.
And then, so this project, this application, when do you see having units ready for sale in this development?
Well, I think we're not going to go into it too fast. I suppose late next year, if everything goes right. We've got grading, and we have to extend the sewer and the water, and then do the streets and stuff. So yeah, it's probably be later on next year. So we're kind of ahead of the game here a little bit, but that's okay.
Good. Well, I've seen some of the other developments, and your stuff seems to be pretty well received, and I'm glad to see that you're continuing to be able to operate in the community.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, if there's no additional comment from the applicant, I will go ahead and open public hearing. As stated previously, you've got two options. You can do the Q&A option, post a question. I'll state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we'll address the questions accordingly. Or you can use the raise my hand option. If you wish to verbally ask a question, please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you'll be heard, and then I'll call on you by name. And then with that, I'll go ahead and give a few moments here for anyone who might want to speak for or against the application to have an opportunity to do so.
Mr. Chair, this is Community Development Director Boyk. I do see under the attendees, someone has raised their hand, it appears.
I'm looking at attendees and I'm not seeing how, oh, there we go. Sure. All right. Thank you, sir. I just clicked on it. I think you should be able to go ahead and ask your question. Director, might need, there we go. All right, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Jerome Knutson from 6520 Keats. I have the tree farm on the east side of the present development from Woodward Ponds. So I probably have 6 or 7 months in the history with Paul Donnet and the development. So I have a series of issues that are unresolved at this point. So I feel that I've been somewhat haven't been addressed. The issues have been somewhat not addressed to my satisfaction, and I don't know if you want to elaborate on the issues that presently.
If I remember from the last application, are you the same applicant that had asked that a fence be installed to prevent people kind of migrating over into the area where you're going to be doing your farming?
Absolutely.
Well, why don't you state what some of your concerns are, and then we can have staff address them.
Okay. Well, I have spoken with Amanda to some extent, but if you want to talk about it tonight, one of them is the safety. Okay, the fence. Okay. I spoke with Paul Donnet on the phone approximately a week ago. He said quite a long time to get the fence put up. I really feel it's a very, very much of a safety issue, especially this time of year when you have thawing and freezing. And, because of our tree farm operation, our ag operation, there are a series of holes there, different sizes. And I very much stress to them that we need this fence up, for safety of the public. Obviously, if they were in my field, they would be trespassing. The other issue is just that, there's a liability issue for us as a tree farm. And that's one issue. The second issue I have is with debris, construction debris. And I spoke to Paul Donnet directly about this, and his response was, I'm the developer, I'm not the builder. So the debris that's blowing onto my property is not my fault. It's M&I Homes. So I specifically want that addressed in the future, especially if we're going to have, approximately 1,000 feet on the south side of us that will be exposed to building. Somebody has to take responsibility for all the construction debris that blows into our field. I mean, if you look at this, what's happening here, I've been here for 41 years. I have a ag operation here. I have to hire employees. to pick up the debris, construction debris so far. So that's one issue. So we need to, as far as any type of future, communications with the city, we need to do some type of who's going to take responsibility for the construction debris. The next issue is, again, fencing on the south side of my property. So as of this point, I cannot get a date or a time that the fence on the west side of me will be put in. So that's, since I can't get an answer from Paul Donnet, now how am I going to get a response in the future when that fence will be put in? The next issue is the grade from my property to the current Woodward Ponds was drastically changed. So in specific areas on that property line, we need to address how that development is going to address the issue of dealing with future erosion, because at this point, it's a relatively steep grade coming from Woodward Ponds up to my home or my property. It's like, when are you going to dealing with that steep grade? Because if it's not dealt with in a timely fashion, then it will become my problem, because my property will start to erode into their property. So that's another issue. So I guess that's the issues that I have right now. I've had very good, Amanda at the city, and I think they intend to start addressing some of these issues. But at this point, because with the present development on Woodward Ponds, it maybe wasn't as well legally addressed as it should have been. So it's kind of been somewhat of my responsibility undertaking to deal with the developer, and it's a little bit of a struggle on my part.
First of all, I'd like to say I empathize and I understand your frustration. Quite often when we deal with these applications, the debris issue comes up. And I think what it really comes down to is setting proper expectations with the people who are actually on site, who aren't always the best stewards for some of those job sites. And that's not necessarily the developer, a shortcoming on the developer's standpoint. And then proper communication with the city, because there's code enforcement for that. And that is typically one of the stipulations in these applications, that they maintain a clean job site. And no developer or no builder really wants a reputation for that. So if it's brought to the attention of the right people, we can typically get it resolved. So first of all, I'd like to apologize that you're frustrated about that. And then with the fencing, that's typically one of those things that gets done kind of at the tail end of a development for various reasons, grading and final grading and landscaping and so on. But if it's an ongoing concern, maybe staff can talk to the developer and you guys can find a solution that works in the interim. But I think at this point, Jerome, what I'd like to do is have staff reach out to you after the meeting and address some of these directly for you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, this is Community Development Director Ben Boyk, and we can certainly reach out to Mr. Knutson. He mentioned having dialogue with Amanda. Maybe it might make sense for us to have a dual call, if you will, or a Zoom call, or however it works best for Mr. Knutson. But we can certainly discuss some of his concerns with the current development that's going on, and certainly talk to M&I about the construction debris and the issues you're having.
Mr. Chairman, this is Paul Donnet.
Yes.
Again. So, Yeah, Mr. Knudsen called me about a week ago and said they had some debris that he was concerned about, and he was concerned about the fence. Contract for the fence has been already let. And I guess we could have Emily address the actual minutes of the planning commission, because when I talked to Jerry, it was a question of where the fence should go and the color of it. And those are the two things. And I asked him, I told him that the minutes of the meeting, planning commission, and really provide for that fence to be on his property. And he got quite upset, and he said he did not want it on his property. So I said, that's no problem. I said, I'll work with the staff and we can move it onto our property. It's just, we're still grading in that area. Nodland's grading. And they're doing their erosion blankets. We just got the bituminous in, got the curb in and the bituminous. So they're still finishing that area. They've graded, or they've probably put on 75-80% of the erosion blanket so far. So that'll all be addressed. And that steep areas where we had to stub in to Mr. Knudsen's property for the sewer and water. So if his property is ever developed, Nodland is the sewer contractor, and he stubbed into their property. So I addressed that with Jerry, and I talked to staff. Second thing was on the debris. I think I went out there 2 days after you called me, Mr. Knudsen. I found the foreman for M&I at that time, who's running that project. I even myself went over and grabbed some poly that had blown against the north line of the development, which is a high bank. So it's real hard for that material to blow up over that bank and go on to Mr. Knudsen's. But M&I assured me they would have their laborers deal with that. And it was raining that day. And I, like I said, I told their foreman on site, who was at the model, and they were getting ready for a grand opening, that it was his responsibility. I have no problem policing that. I'll do a good job of that. So I just want to make that clear. The third thing that Mr. Knudsen really started the conversation with, in the emails that I received from him, are trimming his trees. I have some trees on my property which overhang onto his. Mr. Knudsen has informed me that state law, not the city doesn't have a problem with it. The state law provides that I have to trim those trees back if they hang over onto his property. So I was in the process of working with Jerry. He gave me the name of a fellow who he thought could do that, because my tree company would have to mobilize and come in, and Mr. Knudsen didn't want that big equipment. So I've got a name of the fellow who can trim those trees. Jerry gave it to me, and I talked to him last week. He said he'd call me. He was out of town, and then he left a message, said he wanted to meet today. Never heard from him today. I left him another message, but as soon as I can meet with him, we'll look at that. Mr. Knudsen didn't mention that. So that's another thing I'm working with him on. So that is, I believe that are the concerns plus one more. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donnet. And thank you, Mr. Knudsen, for,
Can I elaborate on what he just told me? What he just said?
in the interest of everyone's time, we've got a few more agenda items to get to. So if it's possible, I'd like to hand this off to staff when we're offline. This is on the public record, so if it's something that's important to get out there, please do so. But if it's just kind of a continuation, maybe we should let you guys sort it out with staff.
Well, I guess the one thing right now is safety, okay? So as far as, it appears like a very short time, there will be occupancy in those properties that are to the west of me. So my concern right now is to get Paul Donnet to commit to a time when the fence will be installed, and to me, spring is not an option. The fall, right now, is when it's mostly unsafe for anybody to come into my property without being accompanied by somebody from Arbor Hill Tree Farm. So I really, really want to stress that's kind of the reason for the fence, is for public safety. And that's what I seriously want to get addressed first most, and then the rest of it.
Well, then again, this is something that I'd like to hand off to staff. This might be something where an interim fence might look something like an erosion fence, something that kind of delineates the property line and helps to keep people out. But again, I think that's something we can kind of take offline and have staff address with Mr. Donay and with yourself.
So I certainly would appreciate that, but I certainly can tell you from past experience, I sent numerous emails. I had numerous phone calls to Paul Donay, and as far as I'm concerned, the only reason that he called me or emailed me was because he has this particular development that he wants to get through. So other than that, he didn't have any inkling to even contact me about my issues.
Jerry, Mr. Knudsen, I have to politely say that you've only emailed me. I'll produce the emails. The only emails that I've got from you in the last 2 months relate to me cutting trees.
No.
Gentlemen,
I'll work with you. Maybe what I suggest is maybe we put orange erosion fencing. No, orange structural for tree protection. It's like a 3.5, 4 foot high with steel stakes along that boundary. If you're concerned about anybody walking on your property, I could do that, and I would feel that that could be done in the next week.
Well, I'm gonna object to that, but we can talk about it with the city. But basically, I'm gonna go on record as showing that the present developer has been uncooperative with the present landowners.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Knudsen. And again, we at the city, I know, want to make sure that everyone is safe and that everyone is respecting everyone else's boundaries. So for that reason, I think this is a longer conversation that the city needs to kind of organize with you guys. But I'm confident that they can help you guys reach an amicable solution. So with that, I'd like to move on to any other comments about the application. Let's see if anyone else has popped in here. And it looks like city staff has indicated that they're going to be reaching out to both of you gentlemen shortly. So expect a communication from them here, as soon as time allows on the city side. I don't know what their timeline looks like, but they'd indicated that they're going to reach out to you guys. With that, I don't see any other Q&A or comments on this application. So at this time, I will close the public hearing and I'll look for additional comment from the commission. Okay, seeing no additional comment from the commission. Again, with development, I often hear about issues with keeping sites clean and with some of these property disputes. So I'm really looking forward to having this city staff address those for you guys. But anytime we have, new development, it seems like we kind of run into, parties that are maybe a little upset that things are changing and a little upset that maybe things aren't going as smoothly as they'd like. But ultimately, our goal is to make sure that things go as smoothly as possible. Any further comment from commission on the application?
This is Commissioner Rasmussen. I've just got one quick comment, please. appreciate Mr. Knutsen's concerns. I think he's got a lot of legitimate ones with safety and his operation over there. And the trash has got to be terribly inconvenient. So I like the idea the developer brought up with the construction fence. That should keep people out of his property, and also should stop a lot of the construction debris. So hopefully that works out well. Hopefully they can talk further with staff.
Agreed. Some people don't like that temporary looking fencing, but if it's truly a safety concern and time is of the essence, a temporary option might be the best option in the short term until the final grade and the final landscaping plan is put in place. But again, I think that's something that staff can sort out with those parties. I'm confident of that.
It would be awfully hard to put up a permanent fence and maintain it throughout the development. So I think a temporary is a good way to go.
Any additional question or comment? And at this time, I'll look for a motion.
I would motion to approve the zoning amendment ZA 20-047 and the preliminary plat PP 20-048, subject to the conditions stipulated in the staff report.
That's for a motion to approve from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do we have a second? I'll
From
second.
Commissioner Frazier.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Frazier.
Yes, second.
I have a second from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have additional comment on this application? Seeing none, I will now turn it over for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right, Commissioner Rasmussen,
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Knable,
Aye.
and Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we'll move on to item 6.4, landscaping ordinance amendment, case TA 2020-043. This is a text amendment, and Emily Schmitz will be presenting. Looks like oh, there we go.
All right, just took a little reconfiguring there. Let me. All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Item before you is a request for a zoning text amendment, ultimately rescinding the city's current landscape requirements and amending a couple of other sections of the code to align those standards all together. So again, the request rescinds the current landscape ordinance that is 1165, and then kind of combining some other landscape standards that are currently elsewhere within the code, within the subdivision, and as I have noted here, ultimately within the street section, which is the subdivision title of the code. So the ultimate proposal will do two things: combine the street and or boulevard tree standards into the landscape standards, so that they're all in one spot, as well as ultimate reorganization of the landscape ordinance. Not necessarily changing a whole lot of those minimum standards, but reorganization to ensure for ease of interpretation and implementation of those minimum standards. So I've broken out each development type over the next handful of slides to kind of provide a comparison of the proposed minimum standards to those requirements or those standards that you actually see out there today in those developments and that are actually being implemented out there. So single-family developments, nothing is proposed to be adjusted. We'll still require the one boulevard tree per single-family lot. Again, we do require 2 of those boulevard trees per quarter lot, as well as the 4 trees and 10 shrubs that you see out there for each single-family lot. So again, with single-family development, those minimum standards are not proposed to be adjusted. Townhome developments, so again, we haven't seen a handful of townhome developments in the past recent years up until the recent months, ultimately. So we really had to evaluate and kind of take a look at how our code was requiring those landscape standards. And as you can see, our existing ordinance required quite the substantial amount of trees. So we really had to take a look at this. And I use Woodbird Ponds as an example. It's recently approved and a project that staff and hopefully our elected officials feel are quite good landscaped projects. So we maintained what was approved as a part of Woodward Ponds with our proposed ordinance. So those align perfectly, again, to provide a substantially landscaped project, but that relates to those higher density developments that may not be able to sustain large amounts of trees. And then on to multifamily developments or apartment buildings. Again, the community hasn't seen in quite a few years, again, up until recently. So I used Grove 80 as an example, and again, compared the existing ordinance, which is, again, a substantial amount of trees to place on typically a smaller site for those apartment buildings. And so we want to make sure that we're requiring that realistic amount of plannings for those projects. So again, what was approved with the Grove 80 project, which is the redevelopment site of the old City Hall, we tried to find a middle ground or a line exactly with that project. So as you can see, the proposed ordinance relates or is right in line with what was approved for that project. I also want to make note that as we move forward with some development in the community, some of these developments will in fact be redevelopment sites. So I want to make it very clear that some of those projects will in fact include a PUD, the planned unit development. So those will offer a little bit of flexibility to make sure that we're not forcing a large amount of these trees and shrubs on these sites that just might not be able to sustain those. We want to make sure that these plants and these trees are able to survive long term as the project matures over time. So we don't want to squish a whole bunch of trees on those sites, which they'll ultimately potentially won't survive. And last but not least, commercial and industrial development, I wanted to include. Nothing has been adjusted here. This table and these coefficients were amended in the ordinance or included in the ordinance in 2007. And we believe, staff believes that these calculations have provided sufficient landscape standards for the past and for recent commercial industrial development. So ultimately, we just have not requested any adjustment to this portion of these requirements. So with that being said, again, we're rescinding the entire landscape ordinance and ultimately reenacting an ordinance that combines all of the minimum landscape standards that are a little bit scattered currently all into one spot to create ease of implementation of these zoning standards. So again, staff is available for any questions the commission might have.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. Since the city is the applicant here, there'll be no additional comment there. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll open up public hearing on this matter. See if anyone wants to pop in and add any comment. And seeing none, we'll give it one more minute. And we'll go ahead and close public hearing on this matter. Additional questions or comment from the commission?
Commissioner Rasmussen here. I would agree with Ms. Schmidt. It seems to simplify, makes it easier to use, I guess. So I'm in favor of this.
I agree. I like that we're consolidating everything into one easier to access ordinance. I think that'll make it easier for future applicants to meet their and kind of understand what their requirements are of their, any future development requests. Additional questions or comment? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and I'll look for a motion.
Motion to approve the text amendment from Commissioner Frazier.
I have a motion to approve the text amendment from Commissioner Frazier. Do we have a second?
From Commissioner Bigham.
I have a second from Bigham. And additional comment? No additional comment? Then I'll turn it over for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. And for whatever reason, my internet connection at home is a little unstable, so hopefully I do not lose you. We'll start with Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
Commissioner Rasmussen.
Aye.
And Chair Kabata.
Aye. Motion carries. On to item 6.5, which is comprehensive plan amendment, CIP 2021-2025, case CP 2020-050, with Ryan Burfield presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Tonight I get to have our annual trip before the Planning Commission to look at and approve our new amended 5-year capital improvement program. What this program is it's a plan that lays out all the major infrastructure and parks and public facility projects in the city over the next 5 years. And the reason it comes before the Planning Commission as a public hearing is it is technically a amendment to the city's comprehensive plan. So tonight I have the 2021 to 2025 CIP presentation before you. First, I will touch on public facility projects. In the 5-year plan, this is a listing here of all the projects. In 2021, we have the compost site land acquisition. Currently, the compost site is down in the vicinity of 95th Street and Jamaica. And while there is no immediate development on that land, it is land that's leased to that user right now, and it is very marketable, developable land. So we really just want to start a discussion with Washington County, as they are an important piece of compost sites and development of compost sites, and look at identifying new locations if that area is ever purchased and developed. So we're in those discussions with Washington County right now, and that's what that is for. It's really a development driven type project, but we show it in 2021. Also looking at the River Oaks Golf Course parking lot improvements of $300,000 that is taking place in conjunction with the 2021 pavement management project, which I'll talk about in a later slide. In 2022, we have the Public Works Storage Building. Over the past few years, the Public Works and Parks departments have been looking at a space needs study for our facility on West Point Douglas Road. Identified a few options, and kind of the best longest term use is to potentially move the facility. However, that is quite a ways out on the horizon, just on current needs and availability. So we kind of want to look at some interim projects to get us through. We have two more major pressing needs. One is storage of equipment and vehicles as we're a growing city, and also a growing public works department. We're beginning to park things outside. So this $2 million in 2022 is a new storage building. that could be in place while we're at this current location. In 2023 is an internal office remodel of $500,000, not really looking at adding on to office space, but it's from about 1997. So look at redoing how it lays out, being a little more efficient use of that internal office space. And then 2025, kind of more at the end of the CIP, potentially more of a placeholder, is the option to purchase land for a public works or parks facility to be built at a later date. I think we know, a new facility is really probably 10 to 15 years down the road at this point. For new park improvements in 2021, we have the Hamlet Park, the parking lot, street trails, lighting, and landscaping. That's the third phase of our Hamlet Park expansion, which is the construction and opening of 2 new ball fields on the south side of Hamlet Park. This work's been going on over the last 2 years. The ball fields themselves were completed this summer into fall, and it takes about a full year to fully establish that turf where you can have tournaments and such on it. So knowing how that lays out, the parking lots will be built next year and ready to open at the end of next year. Also in 2021, we have the Oakwood Park parking lot improvements and shelter replacement. This is about $850,000. Combination of land sale money for the land that was sold next to Muddy Cow, and also grant funding that the Parks Department did obtain. Also in 2021, the Swanland Park. This is with the Summers Landing development down by Hadley Avenue, 95th Street. They are in the 4th out of 6 phases, and right now we've got the park land under this current phase this year, so we'll be ready to implement and construct that park next year. Have $100,000 for Arbo Meadow Park improvements. This is also with the pavement management project, looking at replacing the parking lot of that park, which is located within the boundary of next year's pavement management. We also have a replacement of the Highlands basketball court for $80,000 and Lamar Park fencing replacement, common area resurfacing for $75,000. In 2022, we have the Glacial Valley Park Phase 1. So as Emily mentioned in her Glacial Valley Estates, we'll start to look at implementing that regional park. And similar to Hamlet Park, it does take a few years where we want to get everything graded and in place in 2022. And then in 2023, we can look at doing the ball fields and getting turf establishment going, and then 2024 finish out that project with the parking lots once the ball fields are ready to use. Also in 2023, we have a Hamlet Park court reconstruction. Woodridge Trail. This is a small trail that it's a more of just kind of a dirt path type walking trail from Hillside to Jenner. We have $40,000 earmarked to improve that trail corridor. Also, the Michaels Point Park. This would be along Lake Robert or Shepherd's Pond by the Michaels Point development, kind of northwest of 65th or 67th Street, and Jamaica Avenue. This would be development driven. That land is actually for sale for development, and as part of that, we would construct this park. In 2024, we have a Hearthside Park improvements for $100,000 in conjunction with that year's pavement management. We also have reconstruction of Hearthside Park Court at the same time, that same year. Altman Middle School ball fields. This is the land that the school district, I think it technically owns, and then the city has guided for a future park next to Altman Middle School. Right now we have that in 2024. It's kind of a market-driven need when there's that need for additional ball fields in that area of the city. And then finally, like I mentioned, the final phase of Glacial Valley Park. In 2025, we do show $4 million for the second of those 4 new ball fields. 2 are being wrapped up right now. Based on the market analysis the Parks Department has done, those 2 fields we're completing next year will really serve the needs of the city for many years to come. And we're looking at 2025 potentially to start that next expansion project. And then also $100,000 for a Hearthside Park fence and backstop replacement that year as well. Moving on to our street and utility projects. In 2021, we have pavement management of about $2.5 million. 2 different project locations. One's just south of 80th Street, east of Jamaica Avenue, and the other is south of and including 85th Street and west of Keats Avenue. And this is looking like a pretty typical pavement management project. Replace all the pavement and then do a spot curb replacement. We also have included just a pavement replacement for Jamaica Avenue for $1.5 million from 80th Street up to Indian Boulevard. North of Indian Boulevard the pavement was replaced in 2016. So looking to continue that improvement of that corridor. Largely the sidewalks in pretty good shape, curb is in pretty good shape. It's just that pavement that's very old and deteriorated that we'd want to replace. Also in 2021, we have a mill and overlay project that we're looking to complete in kind of the southwest corner of 70th Street and Hardwood Avenue. This is more of a pavement preservation technique we're looking to implement, not actually a pavement management program. We're really just going to take off that top layer of asphalt, put new asphalt down, not really look at the curb. It's all very new. It's about 15 years old. Not look at utilities, things like that. It's really a potential replacement for our seal coating program to give a different option for preserving our pavements and extending the life of our roadways. So this is not an assessment project. This is just a pavement preservation project of about 2.5 miles that we're looking to complete. In 2022, we have another pavement management down kind of adjacent to Armstrong Elementary, south of 85th Street. Not a huge project area, but we have very old water mains in this area with multiple water main breaks, a big history of water main breaks. We know it'll be a full water main replacement, which will make it a fairly extensive and costly project. So that's something that we're preparing for in 2022. And then also in 2022, based on a project I'll talk about in 2023, is just some pavement work or pavement replacement needed along East Point Douglas Road from kind of the VFW up around Target, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in a next slide. We also have 100th Street. This is really a development-driven project west of Ideal Avenue. We have a little bit of land north of 100th Street left to develop, and then we're also looking at seeing development interest in our business park south of 100th Street. So if we do get some larger end users, we would look to expand 100th Street going west of Ideal Avenue. It's a 3-lane section to the east and just a 2-lane rural roadway section right now to the west. There was just some pavement replacement done by Renewable Anderson due to the large amounts of trucking for a certain portion west of Ideal, but that was really more of a interim measure until more development takes place. Another development-driven project would be another phase of our Ravine Parkway. This would be west of Jamaica Avenue on that property owned by David Waltersdorf. This is also that location of the Michaels Point Park if we do see development occur on this property. But once again, none of this work would take place unless that development was happening. We also have Cottage View Drive shown in 2022. So this is our roadway that we're looking at to connect from East Point Douglas Road up to Keats Avenue through the Cottage View site. And this is in here really in conjunction with the community center. If the community center referendum were to pass, then we'd have to look at bringing the initial stretch of roadway in that I've highlighted in blue to give access to the community center site. But also in this segment not highlighted in blue going down to East Point Douglas Road, that's really where we have to bring trunk utilities up from East Point Douglas Road. And at that same time, do all the roadway grading in that corridor just to make sure the utilities at the right elevation. So that's really what drives that $5.5 million cost, is to do a portion of the roadway, but then really all of the trunk utilities in this area. In 2023, have another pavement management project of about $5 million just south of 80th Street, south of Park High School and Crestview Elementary. I have one other small section of pavement management, and it's a Jenner Lane loop north of 80th Street between Keats Avenue and Jamaica Avenue. And another development-driven project in 2023 is the replacement or reconstruction of Harkness Avenue between, really the two locations of Hardwood Avenue. This would really take place as this area develops further. There is a small area study with some parcels that are for sale for development, but as you see more development occur in this area, that's what would drive this reconstruction project. Final project for 2023 This is our intersection of East Point Douglas Road and Jamaica Avenue that I think everyone's aware of. We have a handful of signals and intersections that are spaced just really too close together to be functional. We do all the work we can with adjusting the timing, trying some new technologies with cameras and trying to do what we can to get by, but really to fix this kind of major traffic issue. It's about an $8 million project that we have that we're beginning to look at and that we'd want to implement in 2023. It does require changing around some of these intersection locations on East Point Douglas Road, and then which would require some internal modifications to these sites at Cub and Target. But it's something we're just beginning to work on, and the council's kind of set as a priority to address this issue. So a pretty major project, and at the same time, we'd also repair the pavement in this area. And then with that section of East Point going down to VFW that we show in 2022, it may make the most sense at that time just to combine the two projects and push that off by 1 year. Finally, just a listing of our 2024, 2025 street and utility projects. Have Jamaica Avenue reconstruction from 70th to Military. This was turned back to the county as the city took back Military Road. About a $4.6 million project, and based on that turnback agreement, the city would be responsible for $3 million. Once again, that's really a traffic and development driven project. Have another pavement management project for about $6 million. In 25, we have a very large project zone. It's a redo of the Casa 19 overpass and an extension of West Point Douglas Road down by Keats and Innovation Avenue. This is really left on the CIP because if we need to go for certain federal funding or grants and you need this type of project on the CIP, we can meet that requirement. But really, there'd be a lot of partners in this project and really largely county and MnDOT funding to pay for this, but something that we keep on here, kind of an outlook on the horizon in terms of grant applications that we may work on. Also have the 80th Street reconstruction from Highway 61 to Keats Avenue, and then also a potential roundabout at Keats Avenue and 80th Street that the county would lead, but the city would be a cost share on. One thing I want to note, the 80th Street reconstruction would be Highway 61 to Ideal Avenue, not Keats Avenue. We also have another phase of Ravine Quay that would be on the Kemp property, which would be just immediately west of that phase 4 that I showed you previously. So it'd be between Jamaica Avenue and the Calarosa development that the Planning Commission has seen in recent years. Finally, a pavement management project for about $4.7 million. Last projects on the list are our utility projects. One fairly sizable one that we're working on for next year is a extension of a trunk sanitary sewer. This is south of 100th Street, just south of Jamaica Avenue, where we have to bring a new trunk sewer off of the Met Council sewer that serves most of the East Metro, goes down to their Eagles Point treatment plant. And we'd bring it over to Ideal Avenue, about a half mile south of 100th Street. And this sewer is really needed to serve potential development in this area, which, like I mentioned, we're getting more interest in and more developers looking at it. There is water main in this area now, so the sewer is kind of the last piece of the puzzle to trigger that development. And that's just under a $3 million project. Listing of our other utility projects for stormwater, each year we have $100,000 in maintenance that we complete. For water, we have about $70,000 in maintenance. That's repairing and maintaining a one well each year. Looking at some booster pumps, we're potentially working with Lennar in the Calarosa neighborhood in 2021. Also looking at the design of a new water tower potentially in our south area of the city, south of Highway 61, about $900,000 in 2021, and construction would be $3.6 million in 2022. These are paid for out of our water area funds. So this is money, development fees that are brought in through development, knowing we have these large needs, these large utility projects that cover that cost. So it's not a general levy or a tax type project. It's really paid for and funded by development. And in terms of maintenance, we have repainting of our Pine Hill Water Tower in 2021 and our Grange Water Tower in 2022. And then for sewer, we have sewer maintenance, $50,000 each year. And then we have a trunk sewer lining project in 2022. That is from Jamaica Avenue, East Point Douglas Road down through the dog park. So about 70% of the city served through this trunk sanitary sewer that goes down through the roundabouts. It's a very old sewer, concrete sewer, and we need to do basically a full lining. So we'll put a new plastic liner inside that pipe, which will basically create an entirely new sewer that'll be good for decades to come. So that's a pretty major maintenance project that we'll be working on. And finally, with the streetlight division, we have about $100,000 in streetlight improvements each year. And that is listing of all of our projects. I'd be happy to stand for any questions, and the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions or comment from the commission regarding his presentation? Oh, thank you, Ryan. At this time, I'll open it up for public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak for or against the application may do so. You may post a question using the Q&A option. If you use this option, I'll state the question to the Planning Commission and staff, and we'll address accordingly. If you use the raise my hand option, if you wish, verbally ask the question. Please test your device's microphone prior to selecting the raise my hand option to assure that you'll be heard. I'll then call on you by name and ask the question. Please understand that once your question has been asked, you'll be muted. If you have any follow-up questions, please reselect the raise my hand option. And with that, we'll open public hearing, and I'll look for questions or comment. And we'll give it a couple of minutes. All right, at this time, seeing no questions or comment, I'll close public hearing. I'll look for additional comment from the commission if there's any. My take on it is this looks like a lot of maintenance. For a city our size, I guess we don't really think about it on a daily basis, how much maintenance and upkeep there is, just kind of keeping everything moving properly. So thank you, Ryan, for putting together this proposal, and thanks for articulating what needs to be done to keep our city in great shape.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
As if we have no additional comment from the commission at this time, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve the comprehensive plan to the CIP program for 2021-2025. Commissioner Bigham.
We have a motion to approve the comprehensive plan amendment from Commissioner Bigham. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen.
I have a second from Commissioner Rasmussen. Thank you, sir. Any additional questions or comment before a vote? All right. At this time, I'll turn it over for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Rasmussen.
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
And Chair Kambata.
Aye. Motion carries. Next, on to item 7.1. This is a discussion-only item, no public hearing. Regarding the Clearview Triangle, Emily Schmitz is going to present on this one.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'll just give a brief overview and a little bit of background. Over the last handful of months, the commission has had discussions related to the visual impact of items, I shouldn't say items, infrastructure potentially within that Clearview triangle, which ends up at the corner of a property that lands on two public streets. So with that, staff has provided the current Clearview triangle definition, which is specific to the front property line and side property line, and has provided a proposed definition that would include, in fact, a rear property line and side property line for those unique properties that do have three sides abutting a public right-of-way. So with that, ultimately, we're looking for the commission to receive that information and provide any direction on moving forward with a formal zoning amendment of that definition and any other comment we might have.
Thank you. After kind of taking a closer look at this, my interpretation of it is, I think the ordinance, because I actually had to look at building a fence here actually before this came up before the commission, and the current way the city does it is pretty self-explanatory with regard to obtaining information from the city and not really bogging the city down with any additional paperwork or applications and so on. Unlike some other cities, it's nice that there's no application fee for fencing. You just kind of get the instructions, and as long as you do it the way you're instructed to, there's no problem. And then, I think to Commissioner Britton's kind of concern that people were not abiding by it, the city has code enforcement in place for those types of scenarios. So I don't think any additional overlapping oversight is required to kind of continue meeting the expectations for what the city wants to see with new construction. And then on a larger scale, with any of these development projects, staff is already in communication with those developers on how and where that fencing would be in the early stages of development. So from, after the last few meetings, I kind of feel like we've kind of parsed this out, and I don't really see a need to amend it or make any further changes. That's my perspective on it.
And Mr. Chair, Community Development Director Boyk here, if I could comment too. I think it's obviously a legitimate concern. I know there's a specific example given, and typically where we kind of see the biggest issue is where there's a trail directly adjacent to a rear property line on like a county road. And I think, and I see Ryan's still on the call here, generally with county roads, there's a pretty extensive right-of-way line. So I think what we can do is pay close attention to make sure that when trails are along those county roads, that they don't abut directly to that right-of-way line or that rear property line, so that when you come out to these intersections to the county road, you're not, running into this conflict with the trail crossing. So, and I would echo, kind of what you said as well in terms of, there hasn't really been an appetite for enforcement in terms of a permit and fee. So I think it's something we can definitely, work on as we look at new development and making sure we have those proper distances in terms of those conflicts with trails and intersections moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Frazier, I guess I have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
I know this topic kind of got brought up, as Ben said, with the idea of a trail as one of these streets rather than three public streets abutting a property. But since that's just a diagram that's in our report, can the staff have an idea of how many of these properties there actually are in the community where there'd be three public streets around a single family home property subject to this?
Yeah, Chair Kambata and Commissioner Frazier. So you see it, like I said, generally adjacent to county roads or the larger arterial roads. And I see Ryan's ready to chime in, where we would have, homes backing a county road, and then have that corner lot with the interior roadway going in front of the home. So it is fairly commonplace, but like I said, I think as long as we pay attention to kind of how these trails are developed along these right of ways, I think we can catch this issue. And I guess maybe I'll turn it over to Ryan if he has any other comment on that.
Yep. Yeah, Mr. Chair, Director Boyd's correct that it's more typical to see this situation of 3 streets around a property when adjacent to that county road. 70th Street's a good example. Or really 65th Street, any of these newer developments we're having off of county roadways. And with the county's new standards of 180-foot right-of-way, it leaves plenty of room for the different parts of that roadway, and the trail being one of them, where we typically don't see the trail that close. The other thing you see more often is like our buffers that we require, like an HOA outlot that actually pushes the fence even a little further back. So while there are some specific situations and maybe challenges in current locations moving forward, that should mitigate it pretty well.
Sure, and I guess that was my roundabout way of getting to the point of we're not seeing this in situations where we have 3 city-run streets or collector streets where we'd have more maybe foot traffic, and rather most of these properties we're seeing are where there's a county road, or maybe it's higher speeds, but there's certainly a wider right-of-way that's maintained by the county to keep things back. I guess at that point, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, any additional questions or comment from the commission? All right. Looks like maybe somebody from admin was going to chime in there. Yeah, I guess I guess I'm satisfied with what the staff has put together for us. And, it sounds like we've got an action plan moving forward to mitigate any, future issues with future developments. So, without being a public hearing, this isn't something we're really voting on. So this is something we would just kind of move on from unless anyone else has any additional comment.
I have a question. This is Commissioner Fisher. Didn't Commissioner Britton, wasn't he the first one that brought this up? And I don't see him on the call tonight. So does he need to be a part of the kind of the discussion of whether we go forward or not? Because I feel like this was his originally his concern.
Well, again, this isn't an application and there's no public hearing for it. So it's really more or less kind of a informational discussion to be had. I'm sure that Britton's going to go back and look at the minutes for this meeting. So I would say, if he's got any additional questions or comment, we would have an opportunity for him to put any additional requests forward at the next meeting. But, I think to kind of get to the bottom of what he was after, I kind of feel like some of those questions have been answered with the diagram that they've provided and so on, and kind of what they've described moving forward with future development. But again, at this point, if Britton had any additional comment or concern, that's something that could be raised at the next meeting or at future meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well then with that, I think we'll move on to item 8, which is approval of Planning Commission minutes for August 24th, 2020. So at this point, if the commission doesn't have any changes or amendments to make to those minutes, then I would look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Planning Commission minutes. Commissioner Fisher.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve from Commissioner Fisher. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Rasmussen.
We've got second from Commissioner Rasmussen. At this point, any additional comment? Last chance to make any changes? Okay, well then I'll turn this over for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Rasmussen.
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
And Chair Kambata.
Aye. All right, moving on to items 9, We'll start with 9.1, recap of October city council meetings.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's obviously been a couple months since we met, so I'll go over both September meetings as well as the October meetings. Starting with September 2nd, the City Council did approve the application from Hy-Vee for the outdoor sales lot. I think their tent is still in operation for another week or so. As temperatures cool down here, that tent will be coming down. On September 16th, nothing to note specific to the Planning Commission and any items reviewed by the Planning Commission. On October 7th, the council did approve the comment response packet for the 2020 East Ravine AUAR that this body had reviewed in the past and authorized publication of that document to the EQB for final review. So kind of wrapping up that East Ravine AUAR process. And then finally on October 21st, the big one, that being the City Council adoption of the comprehensive plan for 2040. So the Metropolitan Council, approved that plan back on August 26th, so a couple days after we last met. And the council followed that up with adoption again last week on October 21st. So a big thank you to the Planning Commission. I know the Planning Commission played a major role with that project. It was a multiple year project as we go through every 10 years. We'll be starting that back up before you know it, but just wanted to say thanks to the Planning Commission for their hard work on that project. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Dennis for any updates he has.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Director Boyk, and good evening, everybody. We've had kind of a longer meeting tonight, so I'm going to keep my comments quite brief. Just want to mention that 12 days ago, Mayor Bailey and I put on an economic development forum that is available for watching as a broadcast. We can find that both on the city's Facebook page. Also, the city has a YouTube page as well that you can check that out. So for anyone either on this panel or watching in the community at large that would like to learn a little bit about what economic development is, how we do it, and how we've accomplished over $1 billion worth of growth here and prosperity in our community over the past 6 years, it's a great opportunity to do that. So with that said, I will open myself up here to any questions that anyone might have regarding anything to do with the council.
Any questions or comment from the commission? No? I don't have anything.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And as always, I appreciate, everyone appreciates the work that you guys put in. As we saw again tonight, there's some heavy lifting from time to time that has to be done here. And, you know, the work that we do together as a team to bring things to fruition is very important, as both community development and economic development work hand in hand to move our community forward. So thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic night.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time. And then we'll move on to item 9.2, which is response to planning commission inquiries. I'll turn this over to staff real quick, but I don't think there's anything additional. I think we covered that with item 7.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
All right. Then we'll move on to item 9.3, any planning commission requests. Does the commission have any requests for staff or for council? Okay, well then, last and most importantly, item 10. At this time, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn from Commissioner Rasmussen.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Rasmussen. Do we have a second? I'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Rasmussen.
Aye.
Chair Kambata.
Aye.
Commissioner Bigham.
Aye.
Commissioner Frazier.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
And Commissioner Knable.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you everyone for your time tonight. Have a great evening.